Welcome to Big Blend Radio, where we celebrate variety and how it adds spice to quality of life. Welcome, everybody. You know, on our show here, our Big Blend Radio Women Making History podcast, we love to celebrate women of the past, the present, and the future. And of course, that's what we're doing today. Today's topic is women who protect the earth and natural world. So we're going to talk about wildlife, birds, even pets, nature, botany, public lands, parks, all of that good stuff, and the women who protect these beautiful places. We have an awesome lineup of panelists on the show today, and we do this panel every fourth Wednesday. So we're excited about it. This is a daily show, but our panel is once a month, and I have a funny feeling it's going to get a little bit more on these panels. And we always have such an awesome turnout, and today is no different. We have some great guests. So we're going to go around the Zoom room here. We're going to do it in like a geography kind of lesson here. And we're going to talk to each woman and talk about how they protect the earth in their way. And also we're going to talk about a woman of the past or present that they want to spotlight of what those women have done or are doing currently. So right now, Nancy and I are in Lubbock, Texas, and we have to give a shout out to Lubbock, Texas, because they have an awesome park system here. The city parks are gorgeous, a lot of water. They have beautiful ducks, and they have like a little rookery down the road from us where you can go see egrets and Canada geese get to hang out. So it's really cool what they do with these green spaces in this, city setting. Not that it feels like a city, but it is. All right. So we're going to go from Lubbock down to Austin, Texas, and we're going to keep things weird in Austin, right? We're going to chat with travel writer and photographer Sharon Kurtz, as she is on our Big Blend radio shows every first Wednesday talking about her destinations on the podcast Wonder the World with Sharon. And you can keep up with her at Sharon K. Kurtz, and that's Kurtz with a K, SharonKKurtz.com. So welcome back, Sharon. How are you?
Thank you. I'm well, and I'm happy to be here.
Are you keeping things weird in Austin?
We always try, and it's not too hard in Austin.
That's good. That's good. Well, we're going to go west from here, and we're going to go over to Eva Eldridge. Eva is a writer and editor, and she is part of the Tucson Sisters in Crime. And we get to chat with the sisters all the time on Big Blend Radio, which we love. And you can keep up with Eva at evaeldridge.com. So welcome back, Eva. How are you?
I'm good for Sunday afternoon.
Hey, why not? Why not? Even though this is airing on a Wednesday, right? But I heard that you've had some wonderful monsoons out in beautiful Tucson, Arizona.
Yes. Well, you were here for some of them, and we had another one. Lots and lots and lots of wind, and the rain was blowing sideways. Wasn't very long, but we had a lake in the back by the tree, and it was nice.
I'm sure the trees loved it. It's so exciting to be in the desert during the monsoon season. It's magical, and the storms are just epic. And the desert it's like the fifth season, right? Because what we say, Tucson has 5 seasons. And so that's what's happening right now. You've got your second summer, which is always cool, but not cool. So we're going to stay in Tucson, and we're going to bring on another Tucson sister in crime, author, conservationist, and biologist, Elaine A. Powers. You can go to her website, ElaineAPowers.com. Welcome back, Elaine. How are you?
I'm doing great today.
Good. How's your iguana?
Well, my iguanas, I have 6 of them, but I'm up to 15 tortoises.
Wow. Are those desert tortoises, or tell us a little bit about that? Yeah.
Some of them are desert tortoises. I have the native Sonoran desert tortoise, which I adopted through the state foster program. But I also have taken in 2 sulcatas, which are a common pet tortoise that do very well here in the desert as well. But then I also have tropical tortoises, the red-footed tortoises. So they are inside because it's a little too hot and dry out there for them. So I have tortoises roaming around my house.
And iguanas. Because this is all part of conservation, right? So people understand what you're doing with them all.
Exactly.
You're taking care of them. Yeah.
And they take them for
you're
talks.
a reptile mama. Reptile mama. They're not necessarily pets, is my point.
I use them in talks and to educate people. about reptiles, and then reptiles that are endangered around the world as well.
That's awesome. And talking about tortoises, isn't it tortai? Can't we say tortai? That's a no-no?
Well, if you say it often enough, it could be accepted into the vocabulary, but currently it's tortoises.
Okay, fine.
Sorry.
All right, we'll do tortoises. Since you do right, I better get it right. So we're going to talk with another writer. We're going to go over to Southern California, Los Angeles, and we're going to bring on author and environmental law attorney Cheryl Leutgen. And you can go to her website, CherylLeutgen.com, and that is Leutjen. Welcome back, Cheryl. How are you?
Thank you. Very well today.
It's good to have you on the show. She's also the author of Love Earth Now, and she was on our Big Blend Radio Nature Connection show that we co-host. Now it's going to two every second and every fourth Friday. We were once a month, and that kind of grew. And we do this show with Margot Carrera, who has no internet right now. Otherwise, she'd be on the show. She's a fine art nature photographer. So I know she says hi to you, Cheryl.
Yes.
Margot over.
Hi, Margot.
But yeah, we have also another guest that's trying to get through, but I think summer gets wonky with technology. Don't you think? It plays havoc with us all.
Heat waves certainly put a lot of pressure on the grid.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Now you've got a neighbor on the show, travel writer and author Linda Ballou. Linda is on our show. She has her Lost Angel Travel Adventure show with us, and that airs every third Wednesday. So you can keep up with her at lostangeladventures.com. Also Linda Ballou, author.com. So welcome back, Linda. How are you?
I'm doing good, Lisa.
Hey, it's good to have you back since we just recorded today, right? And
right. Yeah, this is a double whammy here, but I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, we talked about nature and the environment and standing up for it. So this is a good show to have you on. Also, now we're going to go from California to Pennsylvania because that's what you do in geography, right? And we've got travel writer and photographer Rose Palmer on the show. And you can go to her website, quiltripping.com, because she likes quilts and she knows how to make them. So welcome back, Rose. How are you?
I'm very well. Thank you. Thanks for having me on the show.
I heard you just had a wonderful national park experience.
Yes, we went to Voyageurs National Park. It's been on my bucket list for a long time to rent a houseboat there. And so my husband and I did that for the very first time. It was quite an adventure, and it was probably one of the most relaxing, enjoyable trips that we've ever done. And I've done a lot of trips, as you know.
Well, you like to float. We know that. And I sent you an email and I get this. I have no Wi-Fi currently. And I'm like, oh, she's having a good time. Wherever there's no Wi-Fi, a good time is being had. So there it is. So from there, we're going to go over to South Carolina. And we've got Joe Clark back on the show. Joe is a travel writer and photographer. She is on Big Blend Radio every second Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern time. And I also just did a recording with her today about Etosha National Park in Namibia. You can keep up with her at haveglasswilltravel.com because she usually has a glass of wine in her hand. So welcome back, Joe. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Doing good. It's been a while. But
it has. Just been ages.
Well, you and Linda Ballou have kept me in the nature spirit all day today, so I like this a lot.
Well, at least I'm staying in the same country. I'm still going to talk about Africa.
I like that. We're going to go north from you all the way up to New Hampshire. And I love this. We've got innkeeper Maria Chamberlain joining us, and she owns and runs Oxbow Acres in New Hampshire. And welcome back. How are you, Maria?
I'm wonderful. Thank you for inviting me.
Hey, I'm excited about this because what you're doing at your inn is exceptional. And it's just, we have to come visit you. You're on the list. We have to come
I would love for you to visit me. And I would love to meet Elaine because you guys brought back a memory. I grew up in the Los Angeles area. And I remember when I was about 6, we went to the LA Zoo and I got to ride on a tortoise. And it was
my gosh,
wonderful.
the big African tortoises then. Yeah. I got chased by one recently. Well, it was a couple years ago in Utah, taking care of one in Salt Lake City. And he wanted his organic dandelion greens. And he would come at you if you didn't. And then he left me little presents all over the yard after that. So it was great. So Elaine, they do leave presents, don't they? And they're bigger than what you think.
Yes, they do.
This is great. Well, everyone, for Oxbow Acres, go to Oxbow, Acres NH for New Hampshire, oxbowacresnh.com. All the links I'm talking about on the show are all listed and linked in the episodes wherever you are listening to this. Now we're going to go even further north. We're going out into Nova Scotia. Lee Broverdani is back on the show. Lee is known as the Trust Architect. She's an educator. She's an author, a speaker, workshop facilitator, and she is also an end-of-life doula. And that's what we get to chat with her about every third Thursday on Big Blend Radio. You can keep up with her at souljourneydoula.com. So welcome back, Lee. How are you?
I'm good. It's so nice to be back into a little bit cooler weather, and we had a fantastic lightning thunderstorm today, so I got to sit and look out over the ocean and watch the fireworks. It was quite spectacular.
There's nothing like natural fireworks, right? To have that happen. That's the cool thing. Yeah, summer really has these just magic storms. I love them. Lee, as an end-of-life doula, I know we've talked a little bit about the environment. And do you think as an end-of-life doula, and even what you do is, I know you love to garden, that you do things for the environment as an individual and through your careers?
Yeah. Well, you and I have talked about it, and there's things that I discovered since I started learning all about end of life, and one of them is composting a body and just being able to take all that beautiful soil and planting a garden with it. And then it looks at the opposite side of things, that I always used to think cremation was the way to go, but the amount of carbon dioxide it throws into the atmosphere is just nuts. And the amount of fuel that it takes to cremate a body is pretty crazy. So part of it is just making people aware of other ways to go.
Mm-hmm. Well, there are other ways to go. Yeah, I think it's important, and we've got so many different ways to go now that are better and safer. And it's interesting. You do have some mystery authors on the show here, so I think they're taking notes about composting bodies. It might be a way to take care of characters in a novel. But we also have innkeeper Maria here, and Maria talking about composting. I know you're not composting your guests at the inn, but you do composting, right, on your property.
Yes, we do. We have our own chickens, so that's what makes our breakfast taste so delicious. And we go through a lot of eggs, and all our eggshells and coffee grounds go inside the composter, which we're also an equestrian center, so it ultimately ends up mixed with horse manure. And our chickens are the best fed chickens in the Northeast because they get all the scraps from breakfast, which they love.
And then your products on the property too, when you in the inn, you're using sustainable, products in the inn, so people are in a healthy environment.
Yes, they are. Yep.
Mm-hmm. And tell us a little bit, how many acres do you have at Oxbow?
So we have 16 of our own, and then 8 across the street on the Androscoggin River, which is beautiful. And I think I told you we just received a grant to basically help the animals and help the environment and reduce soil runoff and compaction. And so the Natural Resources Conservation Service is helping us so that we can be more sustainable and protect our pasture and our land, and which will help our neighbors as well.
Oh, I love this. And Linda Ballou is on the show. Linda is an equestrian, and she's written novels. She's got 2 novels in there that I think she's got horses in everything that she writes. Linda, there's an equestrian center in New Hampshire you might need to visit.
No, I just wrote that down. She might have someone darkening her doorway when she
that would be wonderful.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I love that you're using horse manure. That's actually how it was horse and cattle manure that helped us reclaim our soil when we lived in 29 Palms outside Joshua Tree National Park area. In fact, we used to be able to see Joshua Tree from our living room, which was awesome. But when we purchased the house, the ground, the soil was still toxic from the people before us had never amended their soil after construction of the house. And we learned a whole bunch. Let's just put it this way. We thought, let's just plant wildflowers. Well, they came out like little miniatures. And then we learned about soil, and we managed to have a thriving garden in the high desert. And I know Eva, I want to go over to Eva Eldridge, because she also does amazing gardens in Tucson. And I don't think people realize that you can garden in the desert, and you also compost, Eva. That's also a cool thing what you're doing.
Yep, I compost, and I use that compost in my gardening beds. Most of my beds are raised because I have rock. I don't have soil. So, and it helps keep some of the critters out. Some of the tanks keep the pack rats out, but most, everything's got to be up and in pots, and the compost is always amazing when I dump that thing and work, get the compost out of the bottom of it and recycle it. That stuff does an amazing job.
I think Nancy and I helped you with that when we were at your place recently. I think we gave you a lot of coffee grounds because we drink a lot of coffee. I think we helped. Did we? Did we at least put a
actually because it rained and that the thing got enough rain in it, and the coffee grounds, they work their way down to the bottom, and it really helps the soil. It was great.
Oh, good. Now, I want to bring Elaine back on. Elaine, any composting of bodies for one of your next children's books about science and biology? Just want to see if that's something that you would ever do.
Well, actually, I think they just approved it here in Arizona. I prefer the stork and vulture method of body recycling.
Every time Elaine is on a show, something gets wonky on this stuff. We get into this. We won't talk about eggs, will we, Elaine, from that one conversation?
No, we won't.
Halloween. Yeah. And everyone, Elaine is a distant descendant of Edgar Allan Poe. So go figure, she's into music and writing and poetry. Isn't it amazing? I think it's so cool. That's got to be, when you think about a lineage, that's pretty darn special, I think, to have in your background. But we did that on one of our shows. We talked about that, our family history shows. I want to move on to author Linda Ballou. As a travel writer and author, I think you do amazing work to really spread the importance of protecting nature. Do you feel as doing that is important for you too, to do that?
Well, of course, as an adventure travel writer, I get to go all around the world. And when I do go to a place, I have my eye on what's going on there environmentally. So in my book, Lost Angel Walkabout, I have echo alerts at the end of chapters of essays where I would like to bring a situation to the attention of the public. So that is my way of sharing, and I've written many articles about. One of the things I'm very proud of is I worked on saving the Tatshenshini River from a copper mine in Alaska, where I am from, Haines, Alaska, at the top of the Inside Passage. And I lived when I was younger in that wilderness area. And even though I don't want to live there now as an adult, I treasure it. And I couldn't stand the idea of them putting in a copper mine and, putting toxins in the rivers and, just the whole business of destroying one of the last great wilderness areas in North America. And the person that I want to talk about, though, is not me. I want to talk about Christine Tompkins. She is single-handedly saving Chile and Argentina. And she's down in Patagonia, and her husband, Doug Tompkins, and she had the bright idea that they would buy farms that were with absentee owners that were just sitting there doing nothing and had been overgrazed and so forth. And they purchased land. They both were wealthy. He was the head of
Patagonia.
She was the CEO of Patagonia, and he was the head, I think, of North Face and Esperi. Anyway, they were both quite wealthy, and they met each other and decided they to leave their jobs behind and to work on saving the land. And their idea was to buy the land and give it to the government with the thought that the government would at least match the acreage that they purchased and would agree to turn them into national parks. So in 2015, they had accumulated like 730,000 acres down there. And he got into an accident, a kayaking accident, and he died. And she, after a tremendous isolation and mourning process, came out determined to carry forward with their idea. So when I was in Argentina and Puerto Suarez in 2018, they were celebrating the first national park, Pumalin. It's the first national park. The government had given acres to match, and it was 2 million acres in this new park. And it was just a phenomenal thing in the beginning. And as of today, she has been instrumental in getting 15 million acres of land turned into 9 national parks, crossing Chile and Argentina. And I just think she's a phenomenal person. I mean, I just admire her so much. And not just me. National Geographic has done a documentary about her called Wildlife that is available on Disney Plus. And so if you are interested in Christine and what she's doing down there, that film is available. But also she did a TED Talk. And that's very nice, very informative, and very direct because, it's just her speaking directly to her audience. So I could go on about her, but I don't want to be, dominating the situation here. But she was just fantastic. She's fantastic. She's 74 now, and she says she's just beginning.
Oh, I love that.
I love her.
I love that. And I'm so glad you shared her story. I know we've talked about it on the podcast with you. Again, Lost Angel Travel Adventures. And I think what's so interesting, we get into this environmental situation, which we have. I mean, we've got climate change. We do have issues we are all facing with and wrangling. And a lot of times we just go, the corporate America thing, screw them all kind of thing. And that's really, you're showing a success story of to not be so, it's kind of like our politics, right? Right now, everybody's so intense and one or the other, no in between. And so you're showing this a wonderful story. And I want to go to Sharon next because the lady she's talking about also is proving this other side that I think we kind of, if you're an environmentalist, you just start poo-pooing the people that are part of our CEOs and heads of big corporations. And I think we have to get further into the stories and maybe not alienate each other so much in the world of the environment and protecting the environment, just the same as what we're doing in politics. Because when you start really going, everything's black and white and attacking, it doesn't really work. It doesn't actually move anything forward. So, I just kind of feel like this is a good example of that. So thank you, Linda, for that. That's very cool that you brought her up on the show. I know you have to go to the beach now, right? She's going to the beach.
Well, I just want to add that now she's into rewilding because getting the landscape back was one thing, but now she's involved with getting, the jaguar and the anteater and the other exotic fauna back into the parks. And the route of parks now has been established from, the top of Chile to the bottom. I mean, it's a wonderful part of the world to explore. And, there are good people out there doing good things. So we have to, and it's called Tompkins Foundation, Conservation Foundation. If you're interested, they have a website, of course.
And I'll make sure everything's linked in the episode notes.
Okay, great.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you. And speaking of jaguars, I mean, sometimes you see them cross. We don't get to always see them, but they had like El Jefe that crossed over in south of Tucson in southern Arizona. So, there's some positives in life, but El Jefe's I don't think made it anymore. But let's go to you, Sharon, over in weird Austin, which we love Austin. Yeah. I wanted to touch on the story going about the corporate individuals, because I think your lady that you want to talk about is the same kind of ilk, right?
That's right. Well, in 2022, I went with a small group of journalists to visit Rancho Cacachila in an eco ranch in Baja California Sur. And after I got there and found out about this wonderful places, the ranch's under the radar owner is Christy Walton, of the widow of John Walton of the Walmart Waltons. She is one of the highest ranking female philanthropists in the world. And she was in Baja sailing with her husband on the Sea of Cortez and fell in the 1980s and fell in love with that part of the world. And so she made it her mission to start saving these ranches and this property and restore the area's ecological and cultural heritage. So she established this eco ranch, and it's got a mission. Its mission is to manage, protect, and enhance the lands while integrating scientific research, education, and economic activities such as ecotourism, animal husbandry, and traditional artisan projects.
Wow. It's amazing, right? I didn't even know this at all. I had no idea about her doing this. So, and here she is in one of the top, right? So that's fantastic. And Sharon, as a travel writer, do you seek destinations and places that are working to be more sustainable and more environmentally friendly?
I do. I love to travel the world, and I'm always attracted to beautiful natural places. I just got back from Slovenia, and Slovenia is regarded as one of the greenest countries in Europe, with its natural landscapes and commitment to environmental sustainability. 60% of the country is covered in forest, and they really make it a point to they want tourism, yes, but they want controlled tourism with travelers who appreciate what they have. They don't want to turn it into some sort of green Disneyland. You know, they want to guard what they have and keep it beautiful for the future.
I want to go over to Cheryl. Cheryl, again, author of Love Earth Now. It's a wonderful book, and like Linda Blue was talking about in her one of the chapters, having these, hey, these echo moments. Let's what can we do? She has these wonderful parts in every chapter where it's like, this is some action steps, which I think is really important for writers and authors to look at. Oh, here's this, but here are some action steps we as a reader can take away. So Cheryl, I think, give everyone an idea of like how you got into the world of environmentalism. Does it come from your roots as a lawyer? Because I know you're also a geologist, right? Too. So,
right. Well, sorry. I think I'm just a product of the 60s and 70s. I grew up in the energy crisis and the founding of the EPA and the Clean Air Act. And I don't know that I just took that all in as a kid, even though I wasn't really in a position to do anything about it. So I started looking for ways to make a difference. And I started out in geology and then into environmental law. And, but it really didn't get real for me until I had kids. And then it's like, okay, now I really have to figure something out here, because now I have to care about the planet, from a perspective beyond my own lifespan.
And Love Earth Now, that book, does that help you too? Because it is kind of for everyone going, oh my God, now what? Like, we're a little anxious about what's going on.
Yeah, it's a compilation of essays that are just my own stories and struggles trying to figure it out. And what can we do that really does make a difference without making ourselves crazy? And that's the aspect of it that I'm most interested in, is because you hear so much about people being depressed and eco-anxiety, and especially among young people and elders, who have worked so hard, and here we are. I just look around and think, how the heck did we get here?
Yeah.
From where I was in college, I was studying climate change in college back when it was just science. And now it's like this divisive, explosive issue. And I can't fathom how we got here. I thought we were on a trajectory of just, taking care of things. And so that's exactly why I am choosing to focus on Joanna Macy. She is an activist. I mean, she's been around since protesting and looking at activists for anti-nuke movement, for peace, justice, and environmentalism. But she draws from her Buddhist experiences, and she's also a systems thinking scholar, systems change. So she looks at it from a very broad perspective of how do we deal with the distance between what we want for the world and what we see in the world, and knowing that our personal opportunities to make real change are limited, and how do we deal and process with all of the tough feelings around that, the sadness and frustration and fury. And so she's created this program of practices designed to help us process all of those hard emotions. And that's the kind of thing that I need to keep going, because frankly, if I didn't have kids and just looking at the world today, I might be tempted to just check out, because it's really hard to deal with all the hard feelings.
You have too many podcasts to do with us, so you're not allowed to check out. But I think what's important.
No checking out.
No checking out allowed. Number one, how we got here with climate change and what's going on now. I highly encourage folks to look at the book, The Parrot and the Igloo, written by David Lipsky. I recently interviewed him. It's up on bigblenradio.com. I encourage everyone to read the book, take a listen to the interview. You will find out how science has been denied and why and how, all of that. It's really fascinating. It's eye-opening, and not just in regards to climate change. It's how society is shaped by people behind the scenes, all the way to the point of why you have bookshelves in the house is back when the first, Edison created the first gramophone and people could listen. Then the book publishers freaked out, got scared about it, and hired this dude to go in and not just do a marketing campaign like we would do, right? Go, hey, we love books and books are good for you. No, the guy went to all the housing developers and said, put in bookshelves so that they have to have books on the shelves and still buy books. That is the level of where we're at and how things are changed. So anyway, it is not about who's right or wrong in politics. It is an actual fact-based read, and fascinating as all heck. But that anyway, so that's got the history. Moving forward, I want to bring Rose Palmer on, because Rose, her story goes into something we tend to forget about in regarding the environment. You were talking about the nuclear, the nukes and all of that. War hurts the environment and hurts people. And you were talking about the emotional side of it, Cheryl, that I think Rose's story is going to handle both of that. Right, Rose?
Well, I hope so. When you send me this email about talking about women that we admire, I thought it was appropriate because I just finished writing an article about Sadako Sasaki, which most people don't know of, but we experience the effect of what she achieved. So she was born in Hiroshima in 1943. And of course, we may remember that in 1945, Hiroshima was the recipient of the first atomic bomb that was dropped on the city to help stop World War II. And that happened on August 6th, which is in 2 days. So that'll be the anniversary, the 79th anniversary of that bombing. And she was 2 when the bomb was dropped. She was living in her house with her mother and her grandmother and her brother, and about a mile from the hypo center. And they survived miraculously, even though everything, their home was devastated around them. Somehow they survived the blast. They escaped the resulting fires and radioactive rains, and eventually came back to Hiroshima to rebuild their lives a few years later. But then sadly, when she was 12, she was diagnosed with what they called atomic bomb disease, but we now call leukemia. But at that time, it was a new disease, and it wasn't the technology and the knowledge wasn't there to cure it. So for her, it was a death sentence. And as she was in the Red Cross hospital, trying to be treated, and which basically meant easing her symptoms, she and the other patients received uh, chains of origami paper cranes. If you're familiar with the Japanese art of folding paper, one of the most famous and popular folding shapes is a crane. And her father, when she received this crane, told her of a legend, a Japanese legend that said, if you fold 1,000 paper cranes, your wish will come true. So here she is, 12 years old, and she sets herself the goal to try and fold 1,000 paper cranes so that her wish would come true, which was to get better. And by this time, she was now 6 or 7 months into her illness and starting to get weak. And she did. She scrounged paper. Paper was still very scarce at that time in Japan after the war. She took whatever she could find, and she did make the 1,000 cranes. But unfortunately, she did not. She did not get better. And then she continued making cranes with a new wish, which was the well-being of her family and everyone around her. Unfortunately, of course, she passed, in October of that year, and her family and her school friends and her schoolmates were so impressed and touched by her, devotion and her courage in how she approached her disease and her end, that they wanted to put up a memorial in the Hiroshima Peace Park dedicated to her and to all the children that passed as a result of the atomic bomb. And they got all the children involved in the country. They sent out flyers to all the schools, to all the principals, and they collected money. And eventually, 3 years later, they were able to put up this monument, which is called the Children's Peace Monument. And I was privileged to be able to visit the Hiroshima Memorial Peace Park and see this monument this summer when I was in Japan. And what's really impressive is this concept of making paper cranes as a symbol of peace has expanded and grown since her time. That's kind of what she left us with. And so now when you go to this monument, and actually when you walk around the Peace Park, you see these colorful rainbow chains of origami paper cranes that people leave behind as a symbol of their desire for continuing peace and their desire for no more nuclear weapons. And so, what could be worse for the environment, right, than dropping a bomb, and especially an atomic bomb. And so indirectly, I think she obviously has had an impact on saving the planet, saving the environment. And related to that, if for anybody that wants to get their families or their children involved, another woman, let me see if I can find her name. She was an illustrator at Disney, and then she started a website called the Peace Crane Project. And what you can do is you go on the website. They have instructions on how to make the paper cranes, and this is especially geared towards teachers and their students. And through this website, the teachers and the students can connect with other teachers and students in other parts of the world, and then they can make the cranes and exchange the paper cranes as a symbol of peace with students all over the world. And millions of children have done this, and hopefully will continue to do this, and through their efforts of maintaining peace, at the same time protect our planet.
And I also want to say you can go, the Manhattan Project National Historical Park also has a monument for her. And,
yes.
I want to go there, and, and I think about what she got leukemia, and I think about everybody who fought in the war, like all the soldiers, how many soldiers have had environmental impact. They go out and they're brave. They go out, they fight, they do what they can. I know Maria met us on a military history, not a history show, military show about innkeepers baking for soldiers that are on active duty. But I wonder about that often, about those who go out to fight in the name of peace and work towards it. I know Maria's husband's also in the military, the environmental impact that they are exposed to. I always think about. Maria, do you ever think about that part too, about those who serve and the environmental impact it has on their bodies, about what they have to handle in ammunition wise and all of that?
I do. And actually, not even just the military, but I have a dear, dear friend uh, who's 56, and she and her husband served in the CIA, and she was actually exposed to Agent Orange, and she is in end stage Alzheimer's right now. That came on pretty quickly, and it's super sad, And I also wonder, as her family is coping and trying to care for her, she was, these kids that grew up with my kids, she was pregnant with them, while she had that in her blood, and I don't know if that's going through their heads or not. So whether it's military or any of these things that because of the effects of biological warfare or chem warfare or what have you, they have far-reaching implications many years later. I think she got that when she was in the Philippines or in Japan.
Hawaii, even
30 years ago. Yeah. So
Monsanto is, that's where people forget Monsanto comes from. Agent Orange. That's what they did. And Hawaii we've done so many shows on Monsanto that I shouldn't even be saying their old name, which now they have some new name, and it's all healthy for our environment, right? Yeah, we're growing things for a better family, right? A healthier family. We've done shows on it. Rena Kopoletsky was on our show, and unfortunately she's passed. And her son ended up having autism and all kinds of implications. Her husband came back from Vietnam with, he was in contact with Agent Orange, and she never got sick. Well, later she did, but it passed on to her son and then his kid. So it skips generations. And so sometimes the women are just like the carriers of the babies. And we wonder about all these different autoimmune issues we all have. And I often wonder about what about that? Have we discussed that yet, about those things out there? Agent Orange is devastated entire countries, sections of it, She also said, don't ever live near a railroad because that's where the spills happen. It was always transported by railroad, and it spills, and the people living next to the railroad get the spill off. So that was an interesting thing of that. But yeah, these are all things that are important to discuss and think about with what we do in a daily life. But I want to go over to Lee, because I know you're also short on time. Lee, who are you talking about today?
So it's someone who is local, and Louisa doesn't even know I'm going to be talking about her, but Louisa Horn started a green burial. She does, the company is called Epilogue, and she does everything to do with environmental options. And the thing that I love is that the whole thing is run by women. And when she wanted to start her own business and do natural burials, she had so many people trying to stop her. And she is in alignment with all of the Green Burial Council practices. And she makes sure that, when someone is buried and someone dies, their lasting legacy is not polluting the earth. And I think that, up until I started studying everything to do with end of life, I didn't realize how bad cremation was for the earth. And there's so many other ways. Lisa, you've teased me about the fact that I talk about composting, but there's all kinds of other ways that you can honor a person. And one of them is natural burial. One of them is composting. There's water cremations that you can do. And so the last thing, and I've never really understood why someone wants to be embalmed so that they look like they're alive, because that pours all kinds of really horrible chemicals into the earth. So the person that I want to honor is Louisa, who had to really fight to start her green burial practice here. And I'm hoping that it catches on and people start talking about just going back to, wrapping a person in a shroud and putting them in the earth and actually letting them feed the earth rather than pollute the earth. Because when you think about all of the chemicals, even in a leaded coffin, and how that doesn't break down. Yeah, it sounds like, I'm sure everybody's going, whoa, this is a happy talk.
No, it's just cool. I want mushrooms to feed off my body and fungus, man. Come on. I want to be among the fungus. Come on. I want to be.
Because you're a fun guy, right? Or
I do. Well, I'm a girl, but yeah, fungal, I'm fungal. That sounds terrible. But this is, we've got to have fun with this. I know Lee, with doing the shows with Lee, Soul Journey Doula. I don't know. We talk about death all the time, and half of the time we're giggling through the whole thing. And it's because it is, you've got to make light of it. You can't be too upset about things. And I think what's great about this conversation today is we're talking about taking action steps. And like I always say, Joan Baez, one of my favorite quotes, she said, action is how you get rid of despair. It is the antidote to despair. Action is the antidote to despair. And I think that's the important thing about talking about all these women that are doing things, whether it's in business or a nonprofit. It is important because if we take action, we start to feel better. If you're making the paper origami swan, you're going to feel better because you're doing something. That's important. And I think that goes back to the conversation with you, Cheryl. It's about what can we do? And as soon as we start doing, we feel better. We're taking action steps. And that's really anything in life. I want to go to you, Joe, as a travel writer. Now, do you drink green wine ever?
Yeah, I've had organic wines.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I was going to see if it was green or white or red. No, but, as a writer and traveler,
I think only beer is green, isn't it?
Only on St. Patty's Day. But do you look at sustainability as something when you travel?
I do. And I'm interested, of course, in nature and leaving things the way you found them or better. Here at home, I contribute by protecting the turtles of the Atlantic. They lay almost 9,000 nests a year along the South Carolina coast. And I've worked turtle patrol with the DNR and Scoots, the turtle patrol people. Some of the turtles don't make it far enough up the beach. I guess they get tired and they get out of the water, maybe at low tide, and they think they've crawled far enough and they dig their hole and bury their eggs. But when we find the nest, then you realize that those nests are going to be underwater at high tide or during a king tide or a storm. So the nests have to be dug up and moved. Otherwise, those babies will never be born. So I like to think that I'm helping, and that my writing and talking on podcasts like this one helps shine a light on their plight. But today I want to tell everybody about Kelly Lee Chigumburo of Zimbabwe. Kelly embodies determination. She became pregnant after being raped at 17. She had to quit high school, which meant she also had to give up on her goal of nursing school. And because she was unemployed, the custody of that child when it was born was given to the mother of her rapist. So one day, 2 years later, when Kelly was 20, the head of her Shona village pulled her aside and said that an Australian man, Damien Mander, was recruiting women who could most benefit from a new life to become wildlife rangers. And Kelly and 90 other women endured an excruciating 3-day-long military-style tryout. Ultimately, Kelly and 16 other women, many of those also came from abusive backgrounds, they were invited to become part of this new workforce, and they had to come up with a name for their unit, and they named it Akashana, the brave one in Shona. The unit is Africa's first armed all-woman anti-poaching unit. They are responsible for patrolling and protecting the nearby Fundundu Wildlife Park, which is a 115 square mile area that was once an elephant trophy hunting area. And once the United States put a ban on all those ivory ornaments and things like that, they had to close down some of these areas, and they turned them then into wildlife preserves. And Fundundu is thought of as probably the first nature reserve in the world to be managed and protected by only women. And the women are making the arrests of these poachers without firing a single shot. So they're gaining notoriety in a lot of ways. Joining this Akashana gave Kelly the confidence, the paid job, and the chance then to win back custody of her daughter, which she did. And by 2030, Damien hopes to see this model expanded and adopted throughout Africa to employ about 4,500 female rangers and covering 96,000 square miles of former hunting blocks.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
And he
That's
says,
a good story.
Yeah. He says there's a saying in Africa: if you educate a man, you educate an individual. But if you educate a woman, you educate a nation. And his comment is that we're seeing an increased evidence that empowering women is one of the greatest forces of change in the world today. Don't you just love that?
I'm all for it. I'm all for it. These women are kicking
a smart
butt.
Man.
I like that. I like that. I love that story. I mean, it's, they're kick butt. Absolutely love that. I love that. Elaine, what do you think about Joe being on Turtle Patrol? I gotta go to her because she's a turtle and tortoise person. That's pretty cool. We've got tortoise people and turtles on turtles. I call them all turtles. Turtles and tortoise. Turtles, tortai. I'm in trouble, Elaine.
We're going to make that a word yet. Tortai.
Okay. Technically, all Chelonians are turtles. Underneath turtles, they're divided into the turtles, tortoises, and terrapins. So you can call them all turtles. We in the tortoise camp have issues with that, but that's okay. It's great. I love seeing people involved in the turtle nesting. I've done a bit of it myself. And when you get the community involved, it really helps the species. Because then they become aware of their outside lighting, doing things on the beach, building a sandcastle. They had pictures of these poor turtles trying to get down to the shore, and they had to go past the moat of a sandcastle. So just little things that we all can do is very important.
Who do you want to talk about today, Elaine?
Well, I'm bringing up a classic, and that is Rachel Carson. She was one of the first writers that brought environmental issues to the public and did it in a way that touched both children and adults. And as a result, got a lot of, the DDT ban and brought awareness to people that even in their own neighborhoods, they were causing environmental damage and that there was something they could do. So whenever I'm writing my books, I try to channel her and carry on her basic education to the public way of communicating.
And you think back, that's how we have the EPA, is to thank her. And Richard Nixon was who signed it in to power, right? And so the EPA is thanks to her.
Exactly.
Her efforts. Yeah, she's amazing and an amazing writer. She was tireless, and didn't a lot of her inspiration come from being at the beach and at the ocean too?
It did, and it just happens to be one of my favorite places in the world, and that's Sanibel Island in Florida. I grew up during my vacations on Sanibel, and I could see why she was inspired by it. I had the good fortune to work at the J.N. Ding Darling National Wildlife Refuge for a few summers. And that's another man who, through his cartoons, brought awareness to the public as well. That was J.N. Ding Darling. And so
that's a good name.
It is, yes.
I'm not going to go there because you're not going to mess it up. I think, Maria, didn't you have some authors that you wanted to spotlight as well?
I do. And this podcast has been just so interesting listening to all of you. Just before I talk about the authors, though, let's see, it was Sharon that talked about Slovenia being covered in forest, and that they were trying to guard tourism.
Yes.
And there was so I live in just above the White Mountains National Forest, and somebody posted a picture of like 1,000 people on top of Franconia Ridge, which is a beautiful hike. But they said that about 20% of the hikers will actually go off the trail for various reasons. They might want to have a snack, or they might want to take a picture, or they're making room to let other people pass. But they are decimating the really fragile alpine vegetation that's up there. So they're there to enjoy the beauty of the area, but because of just people, there's so many of them, the volume of them, and it's I can understand why Slovenia is trying to guard tourism, because now there's human waste, there's litter, there's trash, and the area is kind of being destroyed at a very high rate. So it's very tricky to balance all that. You want people to enjoy nature, but even the width of the pathway can make such a difference. And just you can't find certain plants at this elevation anywhere else, so it's being destroyed. And then the animals that need those plants for survival. And then hearing Rose talk about Sadako. So we had, for 32 years, we homeschooled our kids, and I was very much into having them read and explore nature and learn about the world around them. So I remember when Sadako and the Thousand Paper Cranes, the book came out, and that's so important, which is why my two people I want to feature are authors. One of them is Jean Stratton Porter, who wrote The Girl of the Limberlost. I don't know if you guys remember that, but the Limberlost was a swamp in Indiana that eventually got drained in, I think, 1913. But
Wait, are you talking politics on the show now? No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
I'm not trying to, but she actually
did. Kidding.
She was a conservationist, and even she was born really around the turn of the century, and she always loved nature. She always loved birds. Her father shot a red-tailed hawk, and she nursed it back to health, and so she's always just loved to be outside, enjoying nature. And she actually wasn't doing well in school because she had to take care of her family and was failing her classes. So she ended up quitting school, and still, though, had such an interest in bird life, and she studied Indiana's natural history, especially about that Limberlost swamp that was drained. So her way of bringing awareness was to write like a book, and basically a children's book, The Girl, the Limberlost. She wrote to Calvin Coolidge asking him to put an end to the plan to drain the bottoms in Mississippi. And she was always, she tried to preserve eagles and work with the Audubon Society. And even later, she developed like her own movie studio so that she could put her books into like silent film so that people would have an awareness. So I think that's the way to reach people, is really through stories, and especially children, and making that impression on them, like Sadako, and The Girl, the Limberlost. I think it's really important
So I think
to educate people that way.
All the guests here, I mean, look at all the writers and authors on the show today. And I think that's part of that. Like you're saying, is storytelling is everything. I want to just note back too about the trails. It's really true of our national parks. Nancy and I, we travel full time documenting parks and public lands. And, I mean, we have so much to put up on the site now, but we've been through we've learned all about the different management levels, and our parks and public lands are drastically underfunded. They do get funding, but still underfunded. And it's really up to us going to places to be good stewards of the land that we're treading on. And, our tour is called Love Your Parks Tour, but it means don't love them to death, right? And you see this after COVID. I mean, what's happened after COVID and everyone going to parks like Joshua Tree, where we used to live, is overrun like you wouldn't believe. It is insane how people treat that park. And the Joshua trees, because of climate change, are actually going away. No saguaros are having a problem also in Tucson, So there's all these things happening in all these little microclimates, and all of you talked about that kind of thing. It's like these little, take away this plant, well, then you're going to kill this butterfly over here. There's a certain yucca out in the desert. You take away this yucca. If that yucca dies, there's one moth that will not do it, which means this one bird over here won't live. So that it's the web of life. So you kill one thing, it's a ripple effect, and when we do something positive, that's the other side. Then becomes a ripple effect of good stuff. And I think that's really, this is so cool about the show on that. I know, Maria, you have another person you wanted to talk about, but I want to go to Eva and see who Eva wants to talk about. And then I have a question for Rose about quilts, because I think they're cool, but I have a question on it to do with the environment, believe it or not. So Eva, who do you want to showcase?
I don't want to showcase one single person. I want to showcase all those little people that you won't know who their names are, because they're the ones who are actually composting and recycling and growing their own food and shopping at the local, the farmers markets. And the people who are in working in the nature world, that they may not write articles or books, but there's a ton of people out there that really care about their environment, and they live it, and they love it. And you see that in Tucson. One of our big things is conservation of water, because we're a desert. So there's a pretty active community where I've got rain barrels. I don't have big enough rain barrels, but I have rain barrels, and I recycle my washing. I have a washing machine outside, and I recycle the gray water from that and use environmentally safe soap. And there's a ton of people who are doing that kind of stuff, and you don't see it unless you are out and about and talking to them. So those are the people I think that aren't out there. They're living that conservation and taking care of their earth.
I agree. Do you remember when rain barrels were illegal in certain parts of the country? Rain barrels were what?
In Florence.
Colorado or Arizona?
Yes, Florence, Colorado, where you were. They won't let you do that there. Are they nuts?
What the hell, man? No, it's insanity, because there's so many people doing, like, Maria doing the right thing at her inn. And Cheryl, I want to go, isn't this what Love Earth Now, your book, is about, is these little things that people can do?
Yeah, it's finding, discovering for yourself what's meaningful to you and doing something about that, and not letting someone tell you there's some top 10 list that everyone has to do this. No, find what's in your heart and act on that.
I
Thank
love
you.
that. Yeah, I agree. I agree. And I want to go back to Rose. Rose, as a quilt maker, I think you're playing a role in the environment because you're not just throwing cloth out, right? Isn't part of quilting part of the reusing of things? And back in the day, we didn't just toss stuff. We used everything until it literally died into the ground, right?
That was definitely how quilting started. It was a reuse of fabrics that couldn't be worn anymore, were too threadbare to actually protect and have any more warmth. So they were cut up and made into pieces and then sewn back together again and layered and made into blankets. Um,
Mm,
Many quilters today are very passionate and adamant about using all the smallest scraps and sewing them together and continuing to turn them into a usable quilt and then donating them. That's
mm,
a big aspect of important part of for many quilt makers and for many quilt guilds. So
mm.
there's a lot of organizations in the US and across the world that take quilts and then give them to those who need them.
And as travelers, that brings up a point too. And I want to ask Sharon this too, because I know how she travels, and Joe, Eva, you travel too. I mean, you all travel, but um, with those kind of programs, are you seeing programs that are genuine when you travel that do volunteer work? I mean, because it seems in the tourism world that, the people we interview in CVBs, visitor bureaus and destination marketing organizations, that I'm seeing a positive change happening, where we're talking regenerative travel, so that you're giving back to it, even in gardening, like Eva does, right? You're giving back into the garden, naturally, so that you're also helping the birds, you're helping everything coexist, right? But we're seeing that in travel, and it actually takes steps further than volunteering. And as a traveler, then they talk about transformational travel. So you may go into, say, a park, a local park, when you're in a destination that you're traveling to, go in and maybe you're helping to pull out toxic weeds or something, some invasive plant. You're getting to meet the locals and you're helping the environment at that time, and you're learning the environment that you may just walk by as a regular tourist, that you're actually being more observant. Your hands are getting in there. I think we're seeing more of those programs. Have you seen that, Rose? I want to go to all the travelers here. Feel free to just butt in and say yay or nay. Have you seen that?
I haven't seen that type of example that you spoke about. I have taken part in volunteer travel, environmental travel opportunity with Biospheres expeditions where they focus on conservation projects around the world. But that certainly sounds like it would be a very easy and quick way to take part in helping the environment as you travel, the kind of experience you talk about.
Yeah. Sharon, what about you? Have you seen
Yes,
any of that?
one of the things that comes to mind is I recently came back from Glacier where I learned to fly fish. And we were in West Glacier, and our fly fishing outfitter was called the Glacier Anglers. So we went to the river, and all of the guides, there's 70 of them, they have to take a turn doing what's called the weed rodeo. So these guides all have t-shirts, and they go out along the river and they remove all of the invasive weeds and trash along the riverway. So that's a hot ticket. Everybody wants one of those t-shirts, and they probably take volunteers as well, but they do good work.
This is the thing. It could be anything, not just, the invasive species, but it's like what you're talking about, Rose, that volunteer, what you're talking about, Sharon. I think it's so crucial. In doing your books, Cheryl, have you come across any of those kind of programs in tourism?
That's funny you should ask. That was a question I had because I've been writing a little bit about that. And I was wondering if anyone knows of a way to verify if you're looking at, say, an ecotourism opportunity? Is this operator, is this program, is it really legit? Are they really doing stuff, or is it like greenwashing, trying to get your money? How do you know? That's
You mean
something.
like all natural being listed on the packaging?
Yeah, exactly, exactly. All natural tourism. How do you know that
Yeah.
this?
Oh, Maria, do you know? Because I mean, you're an innkeeper, so I'm sure you kind of see how wording has to be.
Yeah, well, what comes to mind is Doug Tallamy. He wrote a book
Oh,
called
yeah. He's been
Nature's
on our
Best
show.
Hope.
He's been on our show. Yeah, he's awesome.
Okay, so yeah, that what's that backyard national park or whatever movement
Hmm.
that he has, so that's people who sign up. We have done that as well, and listing the plants that are native, that you are growing on your property and doing, kind of like your own weed rodeo, but in your own backyard, and taking care to eliminate invasive species and propagate the native ones.
Yeah, he's pretty real. And there's also Lowell Bear, that I would say to follow too. So Doug Tallamy, his book is Nature's Best Hope, and he has one for adults and then a young readers edition that just came out. And the website is homegrownnationalpark.org. Also, Lowell Bear, I bring him up because he was instrumental, and I know we're talking about women, but, he was instrumental in getting the Endangered Species Act done. And he's recently written 2 books. It's Earth's Emergency Room is his latest one. But this website, this will really help too. I hope this helps you on, Cheryl, is ESA at 50.com. So because the Endangered Species Act, which is the ESA, is turned 50. And it's really important because it's threatened to go away just about any time we have a change of regime. So ESA at 50.com. Check that out. And it's AT. So check that out, everyone, because there's certain sites like that are genuine, have been vetted. Look at reviews too. If it's a destination or a program from guests, I would also follow travel writers that actually go somewhere. That's part of like what Sharon does, what Joe does. They go in, Rose does, Linda Blue's on the show too. When they go out there, they're seeing it. And, you have an integrity as a journalist to tell the truth of it. And yes, a lot of times travel writers, you are, hosted, and because, you're writing about them, so they're getting good marketing and publicity. But, I can pretty much say, I'm not going to say pretty much, I can guarantee you every travel writer on this show, and I want to hear a hell yes on this show. If something is not what it is, what they're saying, you don't write about it, do you? I don't think so, right, Joe?
Not one word.
Nope.
Not a word.
Sharon, what do you think?
That's right. We're pretty savvy, and we can tell when something isn't quite right and what it's not touted to be.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Well, before you go, Maria, you wanted one more shout out, and we've got to get going. But ladies, this is so cool. We should keep doing this.
I do. I just wanted to highlight Anna Botsford Comstock, who was a professor at Cornell. In fact, she was an early professor, and people weren't happy that, again, this was, at the turn of century, and people didn't like women instructors, or, we weren't as progressive as we are now. So they actually demoted her, and then put her back as a professor. So that was an interesting thing. But she wrote this wonderful book that it's a treasure of mine. It's very big and thick, called The Handbook of Nature Study. And I used it to, I would make my kids spend a lot of time outside, and then they would find a plant or a bug or a flower or a spider or a web. And she had like little lesson plans within this book that was written, I don't know, in the 1920s. So I just wanted to end with a quote, because I know you're short on time. But I think if you can get children to appreciate and love nature, then that's how you're going to preserve it for future generations. But she said, there's a little quote. He sees whatever there is in his environment, whether it be the thunderhead piled up in the western sky, or the golden flash of the oriole in the elm, whether it be the purple of the shadows on the snow, or the azure glint on the wing of the little butterfly. But more than all, nature study gives a child a sense of companionship with life out of doors and an abiding love of nature. And there's just so many quotes within that book. It's a gem. So if you ever get a chance to find it, A Handbook of Nature Study by Anna Comstock.
I love it. I love it. Elaine, what do you think? Since you write children's books and do storytelling like that, what do you think? I want the book.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
Especially with kids today who don't seem to get outside as much as maybe we did back in our days, it's important to make them curious about outside and wanting to go and learn more about just the world around them. You know, we think we're just the only species that matters, but if we make the world unlivable for others, it's going to be unlivable for us too.
Exactly. That's really, really true. And I'm in closing because Maria got me all riled up on this. There's a author and an artist from Louisiana. Her name is Carolyn Dorman, and she is incredible. So she was a teacher because that's what they did with women. You're either going to be a nurse or a teacher, right? That's it. Those days. And, she took the kids out of the class and outside, got into trouble. She said she spoke her mind. And incredible, the artists that do like the botany drawings and like the bird books, that kind of, I love that art. And she did that. And anyway, at the end of the day, she got herself into a lot of trouble and she kept speaking up and practically did one of the Luna things where you're going to attach yourself to the tree and not come down from the redwood. She did that with the grandpappy and the longleaf pines that they have in Louisiana. And today, that's why they have Kisatchie National Forest. The only national forest in the state of Louisiana is because of Carolyn Dorman. Her sister helped her too, also got in trouble. But that was it. They wanted to basically tell teachers, especially women teachers, to not use their voice and to shut up and you will do as I say. And that didn't happen with her. So we have a national forest to thank her for, which, was getting severely logged and still is being logged, but not like what was going on. They were going to lose all that land. And if you understand the state of Louisiana, you will have a swamp, like a permanent swamp, and you can't do that there. And so she was like the Marjorie, Douglas of, the Everglades. She was that, in Louisiana. Today you can go to a preserve. It's called Briarwood Reserve. It's a nature reserve. And there's a young lady now that's a curator there. Her and her family live there. And they just did a bio blitz. It's super cool with snakes and all kinds of cool stuff. And you could go there, see the wildflowers. It's where Carolyn Dorman lived and her house is there. Her art studio's there. They have a writer's cabin for writers who want to be a writer in residence right next to the swamp with the grandpappy tree is one of the oldest trees in the state of Louisiana. And I want to go back. Now that I'm talking about it, I just want to go back. It is so cool. And she has lily ponds. Anyway, it's awesome. So here's to all the women that have really helped the future. We talked about the show being celebrating women of the past, the present, and the future. And I think we did a good job of that today. Ladies, thank you so much for joining us. Everyone's links, again, are in the episode notes. Keep up with us at bigblendradio.com, but every guest has a link in the episode notes. Please go visit their websites and connect with them on social media as well. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you for listening to Big Blend Radio. Keep up with our shows at bigblendradio.com.